Today, violence was a major topic during the State of the City address by Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther. Last year had a record number of homicides in the city, and already this year the mayor has called the gun problem in the city a crisis. With public safety top of mind, he addressed his proposal to add an extra police and fire class to the ranks.
The greatest demand and calls for service, we got to make sure that we have the people we need out there responding to those calls for service in neighborhoods throughout our city.
He says a budget of $650 million is the biggest investment the city has ever made for public safety. Shortly after the address, our Lacey Crisp sat down with the mayor. She asked about a pot of CARES Act money that was given out in August of 2020.
And now the way the money was handed out, it was given to 4 different nonprofits. There was no application process. If you had to do it over again, would you do it the same way?
The most important thing with respect to the CARES dollars was that they got out and helped people immediately.
The mayor has touted several initiatives aimed at combating crime, especially crime committed by teens. In fact, the mayor and the city gave out millions just in the last 2 years to stop the crime. What 10 TV's Crazy Chris wanted to know is, where did that money go and did it work?
My parents raised me to do community service.
Jerry Saunders has been a staple of the Columbus community for decades. He's the leader of the Afrocentric Personal Development Shop. So it's no surprise when Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther handed out money to nonprofits to combat violence, Jerry would be taking charge.
Focusing on these young people that have had multiple violent interactions and committed serious crimes in our community. Those aren't the folks probably coming to summer camps or those types of things. And so it takes a very different approach.
But our intent with this dollars right here, since we're working with the youth, is ahead of the game. The prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
10 TV tracked down the money spent to battle crime in the city of Columbus. Since August of 2020, the city has given out more than $8.7 million. But 10 TV wanted to know how the nonprofits were selected and how they measured success with that money.
The 4 trusted community partners that we used served as their fiscal agent. They served as a mentor for those small organizations to help them build capacity.
Carla Williams-Scott is the director of the Department of Neighborhoods for the city of Columbus. She oversaw the $1 million in CARES Act grants given out to 4 nonprofits in the summer of 2020. Those nonprofits didn't have to go through an application process. There were groups this city had done work with in the past.
So how were the 4 groups selected?
So we looked at, again, so we make sure we had someone in each side of town. These are organizations that we have worked with in the past, and we actually reached out to them to ask them if they would be willing to serve as that fiscal agent.
Each of the 4 nonprofits worked with smaller groups to use the money to cut down on crime. They could use the money as they needed, on stipends for youth doing work, or to pay current employees to work with kids.
Is the city in any capacity following the money? Are you tracking to make sure that it is spent on these exact programs? And how does the city measure success for this money?
Absolutely. So we did with our 4 organizations and the smaller groups that received the grants. One of the first things we did as we were going through that process, we had biweekly update meetings with them.
Williams explains the groups met via WebEx or Zoom on how the money was being used to prevent violence. The months after the money was given out, Columbus hit record crime numbers. In 2020, there was a record-setting 175 homicides in the city of Columbus. That record was broken again in 2021 with 204 homicides.
It's one of the tools in the toolkit to reduce violence. Certainly the programming that we were doing at that time wasn't going to reduce violence on its own, but what our hope was that it would keep young people out of that maybe wanting to commit a crime because they weren't making any money.
Saunders argues it's hard to measure success in crimes that may have been prevented through the programs.
On the level of violence, our approach was more on the prevention side on there, because we know that there's different levels. There are folks in the community. So we try to get to the younger kids and the kids who there's a possibility they may get into the more violent crime.
But he adds, even if the programming only stopped 1 kid from going down the wrong path, it was worth the money.
Well, I think at the end of the day, while we look at the data and all in terms of how successful we are, I think the biggest thing to look at is the young folks that we work with. They tell the story.
In Columbus, Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.